Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. Hello, everybody. Good day. We are back with another fabulous episode of the Her Voice Shines podcast. I'm your amazing host, Shanasia Washington, streaming from the beautiful city of Houston, Texas. And you guys know I love to be here so that we can hear from our women in our community and really beyond. So we have another fabulous guest today, and we waste no time around here. What's the drill? She comes to the stage, tells us her name, where she's streaming from, and we jump right into her story. Without any further waiting time, here's my very fabulous host for today.
Hi, I'm Patricia Herlevi. I'm streaming from Washington State. I'm an animal communicator, and I do Reiki, and I mainly focus on animals, but also I work with their humans to become more mindful so that they can have a better relationship with their animals. And my struggle has been Lyme disease that has nearly destroyed my neurological system. And I have been on a quest to find the right medical care. And I guess my triumph is that I just keep working on my business, on, being an animal communicator and doing the Reiki, and also do coaching. And my story actually began with a foster dog, and he had anxiety. He was having weight issues, and it was actually making his anxiety worse. And I did not really have any experience of walking a dog or really taking care of a dog at that point. So I felt challenged. And there were some times where I thought, well, if I only knew how to do Reiki, or if I had training as a dog trainer, or if I knew animal communication, then that relationship would have been much better. So after that, the pandemic happened, and I was in lockdown, and I went online and I became certified in sound therapy. I became a Reiki master. I studied Reiki for animals, crystal Reiki. I just completely delved into Reiki for a year. And then I also trained to be an animal communicator. And one of the instructors was a shaman, and she taught us different ways of focusing on the natural world, but also how to really go deep with animals. And I have utmost respect for the other species that we share the earth with, and also their people. So I do mindfulness coaching for humans. So that's my story.
Well, I think you think that's your story, Patricia. There's definitely more. The first part. Let's kind of start here, because there are a lot of terms there that I know that my audience may not even be familiar with. So let's start with Reiki. Give us a good overview of what Reiki is. Tell us also, too, if there was someone who was interested, in this ideology, how would they go about maybe even, learning Reiki?
Okay, so Reiki was founded by a Japanese Zen master, or he was a Buddhist, named Mikao Usui, and this was in the 1920s. And he had been on a spiritual quest to become an energy healer, to become a hands-on healer. And he had an epiphany, and this light went through his body, and then he found that he had healing through his hands. So then, this is in the early 1920s, he's trained other people in Japan. He attuned it's an energy, and then he puts it through the body of the initiate. And then he died of a stroke. And then I think he was depressed, and some things were going on. And then his students took the Reiki to the next level, and then it's been passed down through the last 100 years. It's been passed down to different people. So it's a combination of a hands-on healing, but you don't actually have to it's strange. You can heal remotely, but you're still using your hands because it's energy being exchanged. And the energy works on, like in acupuncture, it works on the meridians of the body, and it unblocks what we call energy centers. And the belief is that when you unblock the energy centers and you have the flow of energy going through the body, it's more likely to increase your ability to have better health and well-being. So that's the basics for Reiki.
So did you know Reiki like as a child, or when was Reiki introduced to you? And then what made you say, okay, well, I kind of like Reiki and I want to learn Reiki?
Well, what happened with that was I had known about Reiki since I was in my 20s. I had moved to Seattle, and there's a lot of energy healers. There's a lot of spiritual people in Seattle. This is back in the 1980s. So by the 1990s, I was going to different workshops and meeting different healers. And I wanted to become a healer, but I didn't know what kind of healer. And at the time, a Reiki class was super expensive. It was either hundreds or thousands of dollars to learn how to do Reiki, and I just didn't have the money. So I put it off. And during the pandemic, there were, you could go online and you could learn how to do different types of healing modalities online, which I thought was absurd at the time. But it actually works. And so I became interested because I wanted to help animals. When I was fostering the dog, he suffered a lot. He had anxiety attacks. And I just wanted to be able to put my hands on him and be able to do some kind of healing. And Reiki would have allowed me to do that, but I didn't have those skills at the time. But I promised myself that if I have ever had the opportunity to learn Reiki, then that's what I was going to do.
Okay, I'm just trying to draw the connection because I've actually only heard of Reiki probably one at a time before our conversation today. So that first segment did allow me to get some education and insight into Reiki. Now, to kind of tie this journey in, I know that this stemmed in terms of the animal communication. It really stemmed from you seeing a dog, kind of experience anxiety and things of that nature. Was there any earlier indication prior to that you wanted to go into perhaps communicating with animals?
Yeah, definitely. I took a workshop in Bellingham, Washington. There was an animal communicator, and I was curious. It's like, well, how does this work? I had read articles on it. I'd read, books that talked about it. And so I actually saw a woman doing it in person, and she had a class that she was advertising. And at the time, again, I didn't have the money to take the class. I really wanted to. I was like, oh, I want to learn how to do what she's doing. And she's still actually practicing in Bellingham. And now there's a lot more people doing this kind of work. And this might sound a little woo-woo, but we communicate telepathically with animals. We send movies back and forth. So they send us. It's almost like you're watching movies. Like they send you this information. You ask them a question, and then you see like a household, or you see a person, or you see something, but you don't see it from your perspective. You see it from the way that they would see it. And then you interpret that for the person who's asking the questions about their animal. And it's actually very complicated and very complex. And it takes a lot of physical energy to do it. But it's so rewarding, like when you have that beautiful connection with, another species.
Yeah, I'm leaned in because I know that sometimes when we talk about anything that deals with like energy, any type of energy teaching, and I've had a string of guests on the podcast who talk about energy as a part of their teaching. It's kind of one of those things that kind of takes a toll, right? Because you have to have the energy to give to whatever it is that you're, that you're lending it to. So let's say, for example, that you are helping, communicate with an animal. Is there a certain amount of animals, like at a time, that you're willing to kind of see? Or I'm just wondering, because like, how are you able to balance? Like, is there a certain, I'm only going to see like 2 dogs in 3 months. Like, how does that work in terms of like the workload?
Oh, well, I probably wouldn't do more than 2 or 3 animals per day. And that's when I'm not suffering from Lyme. So if I'm having a good week, maybe 2 or 3 animals a day. I did do a zoo in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I I asked the zookeepers if I could go in there and communicate with the animals. And I think within that particular day, it was maybe 10 animals that I communicated with, not all at the same time, but separately. But there was a lioness who communicated for all the animals at the zoo. Like, she was a little bit of a gossip. It was really entertaining. But she also was serious about, like, this animal's having these issues and this animal's, and then I went and talked to those animals as well.
So. Okay. That kind of puts it into perspective a little bit, because I'm trying to take it through my mind and figure out, like, what does that kind of look like in the day of life. But 2 to 3 still seems like a lot, but I don't know. I'm saying from my seat, just specifically as it relates to these type of teachings, and this is just what I'm learning, just from experts like you that work in this field. I want to shift a little bit to Lyme disease, and I know that you've had struggles with your disease, and I commend you in your fight in this disease. Tell me about the diagnosis. When were you diagnosed with Lyme disease? Tell us what you understood about Lyme disease at that time, and then just kind of walk us through that, because when something is so new, and I've heard of Lyme disease, right? But I don't hear it often around here. I don't hear about it, as a common, common diagnosis disease, at least not in my common reach. So just tell us a little bit about the disease, and then kind of your walk with the diagnosis.
Yeah. Okay. So I decided that I had a map on the wall and I wanted to leave Washington State, and I decided I was going to go to Maine, but then people talked me into going to Vermont. Well, I went to Vermont in April of 2022, and I had no idea I was walking into Tick Central. And I was living in Brattleboro, and I didn't know really anything about ticks. I knew that you had to go in the woods or long grass. People always say, wear the socks, rolled up, your socks and over your pants. And, they have all these things to do to not get bitten by ticks. So I stayed at an Airbnb, and the lady was hanging her sheets out to dry in Tick Central. So the nymphs of the ticks are like the size of a poppy seed. So they look like little black dust. And so I didn't realize that the sheets that I was sleeping on had ticks all over them. Like covered in ticks. So I woke up one night and there were 2 like embedded in the middle of my back, and I couldn't tweeze them out because I couldn't reach them. So then I tried to get medical help for that, but I couldn't because I wasn't on the state insurance yet. And so by the time I got a diagnosis, it was 4 months too late, and it had already spread through my body. And so then it was just a matter of finding some sort of herbal remedies and things like that, because I wasn't able, and I still am not able to get medical help for it.
Okay, so in that 4 months before you got the diagnosis, were there any signs or red flags that something's not right here? What was going on in those 4 months before you got the actual diagnosis of Lyme disease?
Yeah, well, I went to the doctor several times saying I want to be tested for Lyme, because the symptoms I was having were new to me. Like, I've already had like multiple chemical sensitivity. So I already had that. And so that was my baseline. But I was not able to handle the light at all. So if I walked into the sun, I was nearly fainting. I had like really dark glasses on. I had to wear like a big hat, to keep the light out of my eyes. Fluorescent lights made me really dizzy. And it was like I was drunk when I was walking. And I lost my balance. I was having tremors throughout my body, like almost seizure-like experiences, and my legs would give out on me. And I was so terrified. I was terrified. So I ended up interviewing, prior to the diagnosis, I interviewed an herbalist who had Lyme disease. And he studied with an herbalist that came up with a remedy, a plant remedy called Japanese knotweed. And so I read about Japanese knotweed and all these botanicals because I did not want to go on antibiotics. I just really didn't want to go on them. And so I have learned as much as I can about the disease and like what it can do as far as complementary treatments. Insurance doesn't pay for most of it. And so a lot of people who have Lyme are thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. So.
Okay, thank you for the insight, and I want to honor you in this space for sharing this story with us. And I always tell people that I'm in a space and a platform where I can give roses and give them more abundantly. I say it often on the show, and I want to give you some today because you've battled with this, and kind of being unknown, from going to Airbnb to end up with Lyme disease. that's like a 180 in life, right? That's a big thing. Like you literally, it changed everything. It changed the way you move, the way you do work. Now it's this whole healthcare piece to it. So before we kind of shift more to the business, I just want to ask you from the perspective of you having to go through this trauma, right? What have you redefined about life? Has this made you look at life completely different? Sometimes during, our trauma, whatever, we have a shifted perspective very quickly. Is there anything that really just changed, maybe about how you view yourself or maybe how you view the world?
I became more introverted. I mean, definitely, I became more mindful, more meditation. I work with tuning forks. I mean, I was already doing that beforehand. I don't have the energy to do much anymore. So each day I have to prioritize exactly what I can get done that day, and then to practice tons and tons and tons of self-care. And also, I advocate for other people with the disease, and I listen to them. Like, because people don't listen to people with Lyme disease. They go, "Oh, I don't want to hear you complaining. Just think positive. Like, what's wrong with you?" And so I'm in some support groups, and we help each other out. And that's something I never wanted to do. Like I said, I will never join a support group. I don't want to commiserate about illnesses, and all the rest of that. And so I joined a support group, and it's been probably the best thing that I've done because we're actually there for each other. And so sometimes people have referrals to medical professionals. Sometimes they have referrals to different herbs that they've tried. There's a lot of help in that community, and they're also advocating politically to get, insurance to pay for these remedies and these treatments that they need.
That's that power in community, right? And not just any community, the community that understands the needs, right? Because now I can speak to somebody who's on the common ground, who know these the health challenges day to day, and also to this other piece about insurance and coverage, which has to be extremely frustrating that I can't get covered, for this disease. Let me ask you this as well. I know I said this was the last question, but something else just sparked. Just in terms of day to day, like I know that you have said, there's different things that you use. You didn't want to go to antibiotics. Is there anything particularly that has changed really about your diet and regimen? Maybe it's vitamins, other different things. What has changed the most about that in terms of you helping to basically function in this disease?
I can't eat any sugar. So no refined sugar, no gluten, but I was already gluten-free. I noticed you can keep like a food journal where if you eat certain foods and you see what the symptoms are from it, then you eliminate those foods. It's almost like having food allergies. So anything that causes inflammation in the body is going to make the disease worse. So we usually follow a protocol of like what we'll eat and what we won't eat. Again, it's a pain if you're going to a restaurant with other people and you're sitting there going, okay, that's off the menu. I can't have, like you have to sit there and ask the waitress if there's any modifications and, things like that. So it becomes really difficult. And the other thing is we can't handle fragrances at all. So the fragrances will affect the nervous system. And so we might start slurring our words. We might start feeling drunk. It's a really strange disease. It affects every aspect of the human body. So
Thank you for sharing this. Of course, me who I am, I'm probably going to be heavy on research after this episode because I hear something, and really why this podcast has been so powerful, really in just a short lunch, is that I've gained so many perspectives in a short amount of time. Right, it helps me walk this earth a little bit more boldly in the sense that I'm going in and understanding that my journey is not like someone else's. So for Patricia to come to my show and tell me about that, now I have insight into your world, and I'm more inclined to understand if somebody else says I have Lyme disease. Well, okay, these are some things that you could definitely be battling, and I want to make sure that I make an inclusive environment for you. So thank you so much for all of this knowledge that you're sharing. I want to talk about your coaching business. Specifically, I want you to kind of tell me about it. We talked about it on a high level at the beginning of the episode, but tell me about the transformative piece that you give to your clients. How does the services look? Do they spend, a day with you, a week with you? Is it like a full-on program? And I don't know, but you clarify this. Are you tying the Reiki into your coaching as well for humans, or just kind of tell me about the basis of your coaching and what that looks like?
Okay. So the Reiki, because I do it remotely, I do the human and the animal at the same time. And the same with the coaching is my belief is there's two to tango, or, if somebody's coming to me and their dog's having a behavioral issue, the human is playing a role in that. And so when I was communicating with the animals, I realized humans needed some mindfulness coaching. I mean, I need mindfulness coaching as well. I coach myself as well, because the animal is not going to change their behavior if the human has a behavior that's causing the animal to act out in the way that they're acting out. And so it's not enough for me just to say, well, this is what your animal told me, because then the person's frustrated because they want to do the best that they can for their animal, but they don't really know how to change their own behavior. And sometimes it's a belief system that the human is carrying, and that belief system is why the animal's reacting the way that they do. So I have training as a cognitive behavioral therapy coach, and I also have one for transformational coach. And the cognitive one is good because a lot of times we don't know why we think the way we think, or why we react the way that we react instead of responding. And when we shift the way we think and the way we act, especially toward our animals, they shift their behavior too. And then what happens is they can bond, the two of them can bond with each other and have a more fulfilling time together, because animals don't usually live very long. And my coaching so far has only been with individual sessions. And I do have a package that I'm working on putting together, which I think is like 5 sessions. And that one's just for the human. And that's to become more mindful as a pet guardian.
It's always interesting to hear about, like limited belief systems and kind of these things that we pack with us or whatever, and how that transfers. Because even if it's not like the animal, we don't have animals in our home. But even my energy system when I'm dealing with my child, right? If I can shift a certain way that I say things, I can really be saying the same thing, but kind of in 2 different ways, 2 different pitches, 2 different ways, and it transforms the behavior and the output. So it's definitely interesting to see that the cognitive piece is something that can be altered, and also too has a good outcome if you can, nail it down the right way. Now, if someone was looking, they were just saying, like, I have this animal and this animal is not doing a thing, and I really want to connect with them. I just had today, actually, one of my friends posted today that she has a little dog or whatever, and the dog has chewed up everything in her house, the plugs, the kennel, everything. Dog is just going crazy. And I told her it may be time to let the dog go, but you may have other advice for her or somebody else whose dog is having a lot of nervous energy. Tell a viewer out here who may be having some disconnects with their dog specifically, what are some of the things that they can do on a practical level to maybe shift the atmosphere?
Okay. With dogs, I always recommend a trainer first. And then while they're working with the dog trainer, they can also, I would recommend positive reinforcement, not the brutal type of dog training, because all that does is create anxiety in the animal, and they'll obey you, but they'll kind of obey in a sort of more negative way. And so I always recommend for dogs, the dog trainer. And then a communication session can help if the animal is expressing anger or frustration. A lot of the chewing can be caused from separation anxiety, and that's more of a behaviorist conversation. I mean, that's with an animal behaviorist or a trainer, or get a combination of a trainer that has the behavior background, because that'd be the best thing to do. I wouldn't give up on the dog. Like, I would definitely try different approaches. Reiki could be helpful. Holistic vet could be helpful because it can do homeopathy, which can help with any personality, traits. There could be something physically going on with the animal. So, a vet would be a good idea. And to just kind of do some detective work, like, what could be causing this? And also, what time of day does it usually happen? What is the human doing during that time of day? Or is it the animal being left at home for a long period of time? Are they getting enough exercise? So those are the things to look at before, taking the dog to a shelter. So.
I love it. I love it to give some of those practical tips. It's something that we have not experimented with. I'm like, I have so many moving parts. Before we accept a furry friend, I have to get my life better in check before we can do that. So thank you for giving that to any listeners who may be in that situation to where they need some practical support with the animals in their house.
Mhm.
Now, Patricia, we can't leave the space without you telling our viewers and listeners how to get in touch with you if they perhaps needed your services or wanted to connect with you about further questions. Please let us know.
Yeah, well, I have a YouTube channel that I wish more people would join. It's called Buzz and Bark Animals, just Buzz and Bark Animals. And then I have a website, which is kind of a catch-all website because I do more than animal communication. I do a lot of different things. And it's called Metaphysics, the number 4, everydayliving.com. So those are ways to reach me. And I know you can actually email me through, I think, both the YouTube channel and also the website. So that's the best way.
Talk a little bit about metaphysics before we have to go. What is that, and what was the idea behind creating metaphysics? Was actually, Patricia, you have a lot of different little compartments here, and we want to make sure that people understand specifically the realm that you're operating in. So just tell us a little bit about metaphysics.
Yeah, metaphysics means beyond physics. And so it deals with the invisible realms. It deals with energy. It deals with spirituality. It deals with, things like, it's kind of a catch-all for tarot, astrology, angel therapy. A lot of the things, like if you're going on YouTube and you see a lot of different videos of, sound therapy, all of that fits under metaphysics. And metaphysics has been around since at least ancient Egypt, if not before that. It wasn't called metaphysics. It had a blossoming in the Renaissance, and then it went through the Victorian era, and then it kind of started fading away until you got the more New Age, movement with the baby boomers, and then it sort of started coming back into practice. So, but it basically means beyond physics. I mean, that's what I've been trained to know about it. And I actually was working as an astrologer, and I'm still doing astrology, before I got into the animal communication. And I was looking for something new to do because, astrology, I had a lot of clients and then I didn't have any. And then I said, well, what can I do? What can I learn during the pandemic? And so I wanted to learn sound therapy, Reiki, and animal communication. And all of those fit under metaphysics.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to do, to draw that connection, so people could see that all these different parts are kind of connected. So thank you for sharing that. Now this is the part in our show, Patricia, where we cue to you for final thoughts. I tell people that this is a place where if they were only to see this one thing, I want them to get this particular thing out of this episode. So we want to cue to you for your final parting words.
Oh. Well, you kind of caught me on the spot here. I think that we're in a time right now on the planet where there's a lot of divisiveness, but I just did a road trip recently and I met some of the kindest people. So I feel like getting out more of our headspace away from our computers, going out, joining groups, maybe doing a little bit of traveling, or reaching out to different communities is going to help us as humans become more grounded to the earth, like doing more things in nature as well. And maybe even finding people to do things in nature, maybe finding a drum circle or a hiking group, or, maybe go out with a kayak, maybe a group of people go out kayaking, or just something where you can get back into the natural world. And I feel like that will help us humans become kinder. And also understanding other species. So a lot of the work that I do with animal communication really is about teaching perspectives of other creatures, because they don't have the same perspective as humans. Depending on, I did a communication on a snake, recently on Facebook. And the snake's perspectives were completely different than anything that I would normally think. And so to understand that the world is full of perspectives and there's different perceptions of the way the world works, and that as humans, we need to become more tolerant, not of bad behavior, not of anything that's destructive, but of different points of view, and try to be more, I guess, open-minded is my takeaway.
I love it. And out of that, number one, I got that we can all use some more kindness, and this world definitely needs it.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of open-mindedness has to continue to grow and flow for us to be better connected, and better communicators in the space that we call Earth, that we're all living in. So thank you so much, Patricia, for being here. This has been another fabulous episode of Her Voice Shines. I will never leave here without telling you that I love you. And thank you so much again for being here. And we'll be back really in no time with another amazing episode of the Her Voice Shines podcast. And we're out.